Mic check. Mic check. 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Test, test, test. Whoa. Wow. I'm hoping that this is working and that we're live. Live from the surface of the moon, because apparently my cameras are so old that all we've got is like CCTV surveillance footage. Let's just test just a couple of different views. Hello. Let's just check chat. So I'm just going to do a couple of little bits of tech first. This is my first time streaming in probably about 9 years, and I've never actually done this like this before. I used to play video games once upon a time. How does that look? Does that look okay? Can everyone hear me okay? I think that's the most important thing. I just want to know that people can hear me okay. Ignore the fact that it looks like we're in Chernobyl. Hooray! People can hear. Okay, it's just past 7, so we'll get started. Right, objective for today is to make a 16 by 20 print. That's the goal. So, where to start with this? This is the darkroom. So, I know a lot of people have probably seen examples on YouTube where people have nice benches, professional permanent setup. That's not how most darkrooms look, and that's definitely not what my darkroom looks like. So, this is kind of, I guess, for people who have never seen the inside of a darkroom before, this is kind of what one looks like, really. Everyone's home darkroom setup is a little bit different than this. I actually have the luxury of having a fairly decent amount of floor space, hence all the various trays and stuff. This isn't my normal configuration for how I print at home. I actually, usually when I'm printing smaller, because I usually do print smaller, have slightly smaller trays, slightly more compact setup with the easel on top of the enlarger and stuff. So this is a bit of a unusual layout for me. It's just because I'm printing big, but essentially this is how most darkrooms kind of look, and I'll give you a bit of a tour of what we have here. For those of you who have never seen what a darkroom, a printing darkroom looks like. So basically, we try to have a darkroom in two halves. The dry side and the wet side. So the dry side is where we actually do the printing itself. It's where all of our electricals are, our paper, everything we want to keep dry. All our negatives are usually on this side, and as much as possible we want to try and keep an air gap between them. In this we kind of have, but it's not perfect, and it's going to get a little bit more awkward later when we actually transition to doing the big print. But essentially this half is our dry half. So this is the enlarger. This is a LPL C7700. It's actually a colour enlarger, but we can do black and whites on it, and I'll explain kind of how the process or the principles of that work as we kind of go along. Mac obviously for doing the streaming. We have a mechanical timer here. Everyone has their own different setup when it comes to these. Mine is a pretty simple mechanical timer. It goes up from half a second to 30 seconds in half-second increments. It's a little bit broken at the moment because it's supposed to have a permanent off, permanent on toggle switch, but it doesn't work anymore. I've got my paper over here, which we'll talk about in a little minute, which is Ilford Warm Tone RC Pearl, but I'll talk about that in a little while. For those of you who are interested in the setup, this is a bit more in the setup. This is actually a 16 by 12 beard easel. It's a 2-blade easel, so we have 2 blades rather than 4 blades, which are more configurable. On the enlarger tonight, sorry, we've got a Mayopta Anoret 80mm 5.6 because we're shooting a 6x6 medium format negative. I have a couple of other lenses for different formats, so I have 50mm Durst Neonon f 5.6, I think, for 35mm, and I have a very nice Rodenstock Rodagon 105 for 6.7, which I could use tonight, but we're not going to. The trays. So this is the simplest setup that you can have for the trays, as in the barest minimum setup that you can have for the trays. Normally and ideally I would like to have them all out on the floor, which is what I normally do, but because of space constraints with the size of the setup that we're shooting this evening, I've got to put one on the toilet. So this is an accident waiting to happen. Developer, the standard way of doing this is to have the developer in the red tray, then we've got the stop bath in our grey, and then once we've cleared the image, we have our white tray at the end. Mostly the red is just to stop any like stray reflections and light and things like that from affecting the print before we actually develop it. So tonight I'm using, there's 2 litres in each of these trays by the way, but tonight I'm using Ilford Multigrade, which is 1 to 9. Stop bath is just a spirit vinegar bath. Pretty much any acid will do, to be honest with you. I think acetic acid is the one that they normally use if you buy it like professionally. But I just mix up a basic acidic solution with vinegar. And water won't do, by the way, for this, because we need to well, technically you can, but it's better to help preserve your fixer. So the fixer that we're using is Photospeed FX30, which is an odorless fixer at 1 to 4. I'm sorry, I should say this is a 1% vinegar solution. Right. That's the setup. There's a few little bits off camera that I'm probably don't really need to show you, but I've got a small drying rack at the back, and then we've just got various incidentals and odds and ends, and that's it. That's pretty much it for the setup. The way that I'm going to run this tonight, because I'm making a big 16 by 20, is to start small, and then we're going to go big from there. I could burn a few 16 by 20 sheets to just do a big print right off the rip, but it's quite expensive to do that, and I find it, generally speaking, a bit easier to do a small preparatory print, get all my settings locked in, and just warm up more than anything else, because this is going to be a bit fucking janky as we start, and then we'll go for a bigger the bigger print after that. What I am worried about is the fact that my laptop isn't turning the screen off, and I want it to, because it's gonna need to be dark in here, you know? What is happening? Hello Jones, welcome to the stream. Stay off after 1 minute. Okay, so I'm gonna just minimize everything, I think. Well, apologies. This is not going to be a very seamless professional experience because I've never done this before, and I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, basically. This kind of hinges on the computer screen turning off though, because if it doesn't, and it did earlier, so I'm not sure why it isn't now. I'm hoping we can just lock. Just bear with me 1 second. I'm just gonna go into a stream pause. Just bear with me. I'm just gonna let this do its thing, and then if we, if I need to, then, holy frickly, hang on. Take me there, baby. Why do I look like a fucking Chernobyl goblin doing this? It's horrendous, isn't it? Okay. Right. Let me try and explain what I'm going to do, and hopefully this will just calm itself down in a minute, and we'll be able to print. So this is going to go, like I said earlier, it's basically going to go in sort of 2 phases. I'm going to do a smaller scale print, and I'm going to do a big print. Actually, let me just switch to my webcam so you can actually see me slightly better, because this, I think, is slightly nicer view. What we're going to do is going to do a bunch of test strips, so we don't just jump into making a print right from the rip. Essentially what we have to do is, first of all, is work out our exposure. So printing is a little bit different to, say, taking a picture, because what we've got to do is we've got to establish what our baseline exposure is, so work out where our highlights get placed, and then we go from there in terms of modifying our contrast to essentially put our shadows into the right place. So the first phase of this is I'm going to probably do at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 test strips. It depends how complicated the image actually ends up being. Those test strips are going to be purely to figure out what our time is looking like. So I usually start with 2-second intervals, so I'll start with like a 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 second strip, and I appreciate that that's not going to make a whole lot of sense now, just me talking, but that's what it's going to look like. I'm just going to do it incrementally across the strip. And actually, let me show you the image that we're going to be working with. So there's a bit of backstory to this actually, and I don't know if it's worth just explaining this now as well. Let me sit down. I saved my spine. So a few months back, SCUL Collective was gifted a whole bunch of film by Foma. So if you don't know Foma, Foma are a company, a Czech company who've been manufacturing film since the late 1800s, and they gave SCUL, our co-founder Jan, a whole bunch of film, and I was very grateful to get one roll of Fomapan 200 off of him, and I shot it out in the New Forest with Tommy, my Hassel brother, about I don't know, it must have been about 2 months ago at this point. And the result of that is the image that you see on your screen now, essentially. That is on the Hasselblad, it was shot on my Hasselblad, on the Foma 200 developed here at home in this very room in Extol. And the objective, essentially, like I say, is to print that. And if you take a look at this image, okay, so we've got quite a lot of highlight details moving through the trees, moving through the sort of foliage in the top part of the image. Then we've got, you know, this trunk that's coming down. We've got quite a lot of shadow density on either side, really, in those deep trunks, and in that kind of deeper foliage in the bottom right. I don't have a pointer, so you're just going to have to imagine where I'm describing on the screen. Sorry. What I'm thinking about when I was planning this over the various weeks is if I do a test strip that kind of runs along the top, so see where the trunk kind of comes down and begins that spiral. If I just do a slice across there, because that's going to give me some of the shadow, some of the darkest shadow portions that I want to maintain over the trunk, while also capturing some of the brightest highlights in the image. As I say, printing is a little bit different to normally to shooting, and essentially the first pass of this, we're going to be just trying to set our highlights. What do our highlights look like? And we control that by exposure time primarily. So the lens has got an aperture. I'm probably going to stop down. Everything is focused here, so we're all set up. I'm going to shoot this probably at f8, and then I'm probably going to do, like I say, 2-second increments. So our longest exposure should be probably about 10 or 12 seconds, depending on how many I do, and that should give us a pretty good initial idea about where we want to set our exposure. Now, 2-second stops at that level is not very granular. Once we take a look at that strip and we dried it off, we've developed it, we'll do another strip that will get even closer to what our final exposure is, and then probably a final strip, or maybe just a test print, just to have an overall look at what that looks like. And then once we're happy with how the exposure looks, in the highlights, then we have to contrast grade our negative, and I'll explain that when it comes to it. But essentially, that involves controlling the magenta filter on the enlarger and dialing that in to increase our shadow density or decrease it. It's very unlikely that we'll need to decrease. Very much more likely that we'll have to increase. So, how is best to do this? I'm going to switch to the tripod. And this isn't shutting off. Fuck's sake! So, I'm hoping if I lock screen, it will just power off the screen and not fuck the stream. So if you just bear with me, I'm just going to test to make sure this works. Like I say, I knew this was going to be a bit janky like. So if I lock now, it refuses. Okay. Okay, we're in red light mode. I'm just going to wait for this to hopefully dim the screen, and if that doesn't work, then we're going to have to put the naughty suit on and smother it. But hello to all the new joiners. In the meantime, I'm just going to get a glass of wine. If anyone has any questions, by the way, please just slap them in chat, and we'll talk about them. Just appreciate there's probably quite a lot of like technical detail or what have you that may have just passed people by. What is everyone drinking this evening? 800,000 kegels, no big deal. You know, a real pro would have done maybe a test stream or something to make sure this actually worked. Although in fairness, I was messing about earlier with this, and it was working and it was turning off, and now I don't know why it isn't. Tommy, red wine, fine choice. We're drinking white wine here this evening. I may have to smother it. I don't think there's any choice. I think we're going to have to put the old bag on head. Fine choice. Okay. I apologise for what's about to happen. This is my this is my film changing bag, but I can't think of a better solution for telling the laptop to go away. Actually, that is very effective. Jones water, come on. Right. Hopefully, I haven't actually checked this, but hopefully in this box of old paper there are a couple of old test strips, and if there aren't, I'm probably going to throw myself under a bus. There are. Right, I'm going to do a fairly large test strip to start, and then actually I'm going to do it slightly different to how I described, but I'm going to do a fairly large test strip to start, and that should hopefully give you guys, if I can work out the technology, a good point of reference for how this is going to work. So, I have dialed in 2 seconds on my timer. I'm just going to set the paper in place. So actually, rather than how I described it, I don't know if you can see me still, but I'm just a phantom voice glowing out of the fucking red gloom. But I'm actually running this test strip diagonally across the whole center of the image. So what I'm going to do, I've got a piece of cardboard, and I'm going to do an overall exposure of 2 seconds. So we're going to hit the switch. Okay, that was 2 seconds. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this piece of cardboard to create a series of increments that are going to protect portions of the paper and allow other portions to be exposed. So the idea is that we'll have one strip that's 2 seconds exposed, then one that's 4, 8, 10, and so on. So here we go. I think I want this part to be the deepest exposed, so here we go. Here is another 2. Here is another 2. Here is another 2. And here is another 2. I hope people actually I'm going to do one more. And I hope people kept track of that, because I actually have no idea how many it was. That was 5, wasn't it? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So we've got exposure range on the paper from 2 seconds to 12 seconds. Now I apologise if anyone is using Alexa in the house, because I use Alexa here because it's the most convenient way for me to do a timing. So Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
Right, so we have our test strip in our tray. This is a very, very unwieldy situation, by the way, because I have 2 litres of fluid in here, and it's balanced on a not perfectly flat toilet lid, and it is a comically large amount of fluid for the size of the test strip that we're putting in, and it will be much, much larger than the 8x10 print that we'll make in these as well. But I will, as we go through, try to set up the webcam so you'll be able to see the print in theory emerge. I don't know if it'll actually work, but we'll give it a try, and hopefully that might look quite interesting, especially when we do the 16x20, but we'll get to that point in a little bit. So for the time being, it might be a little bit dull while you watch radiation scratches flicker across your screen. So 90 seconds is what I normally develop at about 20 degrees centigrade. In multigrade, you can do it anywhere between sort of 60 seconds and sort of 3 minutes, depending on temperature, depending on the depth of development that you're after as well. This is a little bit warm, so 90 seconds might be a bit too far, but we'll see how it goes. Then I'm not going to do a proper fix. I'm only going to do about 15 seconds worth of fixing. We'll save that for when we do the big print, so it also makes the process a lot slower. Alexa, stop. So we're just going to take that and we're just going to dry it off, just try to get a bit of that excess developer off. Slap that into our stop bath, just for a few seconds, and all the stop bath is doing is just halting development. All it's doing is just neutralising the developer, and then we just pop that into our fixer for, I don't know, about 10 or 15 seconds. If I was doing a proper print, I would be fixing for a minute or 2 minutes at this dilution, but I'm not going to bother with that for the purposes of this. Just going to check that my paper is away. I'm going to turn my light on, so watch your eyes. Wow! And so all that happens after we've fixed is that we just give it a rinse. I only do the test strips in the sink. I've got a squeegee somewhere, hang on a minute. So squeegee is really helpful because when prints are wet, you can't get a good sense of what they will actually look like. Now, I'm going to switch cameras, hang on. Take the condom off. Right, so hopefully you can see this. Okay, so this is not going to look very good. Actually, one second. Uh-oh! How's that? So here's our test strip. So you can see how we've exposed differently. So this is our 2-second exposure here. You can see that. Then we have a 4-second here. Then we have 8, 10. What did we say? 12 was it at the end? Can you see that? Focus. Here we go. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then 12. I can't remember if we did 12. Now, by my money, I actually think that 4 seconds looks pretty good. 2 seconds is obviously comically overexposed. I don't know if you can see. I don't know if you can see that. It's so blown out on the screen. But there actually is a bit of detail there. You just can't quite tell. And you can see how after 2, 4, 6, after sort of 8 seconds, we start to kind of run out. They all look very, very deep. This one up here, 10 or 12 seconds, whatever that was, is just essentially pure black. 1 second. Can you see that? So, I think what we're probably going to do for our next test strip is probably try a. So this is something I really like about printing. Actually, is that it's a technical process, but it's also an aesthetic one, and so we have to make a decision on where we want to take this from a visually aesthetic point of view. I think if we try maybe 3, 4, and 5 seconds as a test strip, that should probably get us within the exposure regime that I'm looking for. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Because remember, even though some of these shadows might look like where they're placed properly, the actual intention of this process is to try to test where our highlights are, and I probably haven't hit enough highlights for me to be able to make a good judgment call on where I want to take it. So although these in sort of 6 seconds look quite good, and this will dry darker, this is quite deceptive, this will dry darker, I actually think that we want to try a little bit faster. We want to try sort of, let's try 3, 4, 5 and maybe 6 second exposure split on our next test strip, and then see how that goes. So I'll just throw that down there. I'm just going to wash my hands. So one thing I'm always really militant about in the darkroom, let's turn this off, is making sure that you wash your hands, kids, because fixer is a really tenacious substance, and if you get fixer on your fingertips and then you put it on your paper, it is ruined. So that's just a little tip. Always do a quick wash before you touch your papers again. So I'm just checking chat just to make sure that there's no problem. Is everyone still hearing me, seeing me okay? Is everything alright with the stream? I have absolutely no fucking idea whether or not this is working, or if anything is even reasonably visible or hearable. But I'm sure that if things were going horribly shit-shaped, you would all, you're all nice people, and you'd all tell me. So, condom is going back on. And what did we say? We said that we would do a 3, 4, 5 second strip for the next one. So that actually was quite a large test strip. It was quite wide. So the next one's going to be a bit skinnier. I don't have too many of these left actually, but I can always cut some more. if we need to. Yeah, these look pretty pathetic. These look pretty weedy, but it should be good enough for me to get a sense of direction, even if you guys won't be able to see it very well. So, everything is set up and ready. I have changed my timer to 3 seconds. So what I'll do is I'll do a 3-second global exposure, and then I'll do 2 1-second exposures to get the actually I'll do 3 1-second exposures to get the 6-second, just as a point of comparison. So 3 seconds. I've just realised something. I am printing at grade 5. We're going to do the test strip anyway, and I'll explain in a moment how I fucked up. That's me not paying attention. So that's 4 seconds. That's 5 seconds, and that's 6 seconds. Right. I don't know if you can see that. Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
I don't know if you could see what I've just seen from your field of view, but the image was being printed very purple. And so, because this is a colour head, I can control magenta, yellow, and blue filtration independently. And the way that colour filtration works in black and white is that if I change the filter sets of magenta, I can increase or decrease contrast. So more magenta is more contrast, more yellow is less contrast, and I've also, because I'm not paying attention, I've also fucked up my test strip. I think I put it in backwards. It's all going horribly wrong, and we've only just begun. Alexa, stop. Now, I usually fuck things up at least a couple of times a night, and that's our first one. So someone should probably start a tally for that, actually. But that gives me a good excuse to do 2 things. First, cut a few test strips up, and second, correct my filtration. Alexa, stop. So what I've done wrong is, and let me see if I can show you. Let me see if I can show you. It just needs a bit of darkness. Okay. So if I set this for 30 seconds, can you see this? No. 1 second. Can you see this? Okay. That is very purple. And if I set the white, and that's what it looks like without filtration. Okay, so we have, that's pure white light passing through the colour head. And if I turn it off, that's purple. And that's because the last printing session that I did, I actually was working on a, working on a very, very, very low contrast image. Can you see that? I was working on a very, very low contrast image, and so I needed to set a very, very high level of contrast. So this is at maximum magenta. And I have forgotten to turn it back. So that is going to affect our exposure times. And I'm going to start from scratch. But now that I know that, I'm going to basically just sort of power through. And I'm going to, let me just get a pair of scissors. And I'll be back in 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves. What? Ah. So, oh no, I've forgotten the most important thing in the world. It's all going wrong. What do you want? Oh, okay, that was really fast, thank you. I don't know where I left my little piece of paper. All of my filtration calculations. I don't know where that's gone. What did I do with that? One second, gang. I have misplaced something quite important. So, oh no, I've got it. Okay. So, on the front of the enlarger are my colour filter factor settings, and I have a piece of paper that I've written all of my corrections onto. But unfortunately, I need to run the enlarger in order to be able to determine them. So, this is a good way of seeing how this works. So, I just need to dial in. Let's say 41 yellow and then 32 magenta. Okay. Right. And in theory, when I switch back to, oops, excuse me, the webcam, you should be able to see the difference. So you see that? Let's just do 10 seconds on that again so you can see. So you can see how this light is now much more yellow and much less magenta than it was before. Basically what I'm going to be doing is just sucking out all of the contrast. Okay, so we're going to have a much lower contrast image. So the next test strip that we do is probably going to look quite a bit less extreme than what I've just shown you. But I don't want it to be printed at grade 5, because grade 5 is essentially the harshest contrast that you can print at, and it would look ridiculous. So, and the negative isn't that flat. So, and I can explain the principle of this a bit later, but the condom's going back on, and what I'm just going to do now is, while it's nice and dark, is just grab my trusty darkroom scissors and just cut one of these strips up. So when you buy paper, it just comes in a box like this, or sometimes a non-rigid box, and this light-proof black bag. And you have to cut them up yourself if you want to make test strips. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one off the bottom. I'm going to put the bag away. You have to be quite militant about this, at least I do, because I'm dumb. And just put that away so that if anything happens and I accidentally turn the light on in here, I'm not going to ruin the entire bag. And I'm just going to cut this up, I don't know if you can see it, I'm just going to cut this up into a series of fairly generous strips, so I'm probably going to do about 5. So they'll probably be about 1 inch wide, maybe something like that. And what I'm going to do is, and I apologise about how slow this process is, but I'm also talking to you guys and fucking around with the laptop. So what I'm going to do is doing exactly the same test strip as my first one, the one that we did about 17 years ago at this point. And just run the same experiment again, from 2 seconds all the way up to 10 or 12 seconds, and it will be, I think, actually probably quite an instructive exercise in showing you how contrast works, because I hadn't actually intended on kind of discussing that until we got a little bit further through, and I was ready to, I was ready with my proper exposure. So I'm just going to put that away. All cut up. I'm setting that back down to 2 seconds on the timer. So we are ready to go. Now let me just make sure I haven't made a mistake here. This is the right side up. We are at F8, still haven't touched that. Filtration is in at grade 2. Okay, let's try again. Nope, I tell you what, I've done that. I haven't put on my filter. I've set that back to white, I think. Oh no, wait, have I? No, I don't think I have. Okay, so that was 2 seconds. This is going to be 4 seconds, 8 seconds, 10 seconds, and then one more 12 seconds. So we've got gradation from 2 to 12 seconds on this one. Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
She's always so polite. And I guess if you want to talk about the technical details of why we use different grades of magenta and yellow to address our contrast, or essentially the density of our shadows, is because paper actually has a number of different emulsions in it that are sensitive to slightly different regimes of light. None of it's sensitive to red, which is why we have this red safe light in here. They're called orthochromatic, as opposed to panchromatic, which means they're sensitive to the whole visible wavelength. These are orthochromatic, so they drop off in sensitivity very, very abruptly at red. This is coming in very, very deep, by the way. I think it'll be interesting to show you when this comes out. These different emulsions in the paper react differently in combination with one another. So essentially when we have no filtration, they're all being activated. Have I got it the right way around? I can never remember. But by modifying our magenta and yellow values, essentially we control how much and which of those emulsions that we want to be exposed to light. And so the maximum magenta, we're essentially passing Alexa, stop. The maximum amount of light through, which is why our shadow's density is so deep. So I'm just going to do this for a few seconds in the stop bath, and then a few seconds in the fixer. It is getting unbelievably hot in here with a laptop wearing array and being in a closed space. So, final check around, papers away. Okay, I'm just going to take this out. Now this is looking very, very flat indeed, comparatively. And I can immediately tell that I don't like this, but it's because we have taken the contrast out. So I'm going to show you. What these look like. Oh my god, this is so much harder than I thought that it was going to be. Jesus Christ. I set your Alexa as well. I do apologise. Right. I'm just going to turn the... Right. So, remember when I wasn't dumb? Or remember when I was dumb? So this is our original strip. This was the equivalent of filter grade 4 or 5. So this was at maximum magenta. 170 magenta was dialed in. And this is the same strip, or the same equivalent strip of what I call grade 2, okay? So you can tell the difference. I don't need to point out the difference to you. This one is significantly less contrasty. The density of the shadows is significantly lower. So it's hard to compare exactly. Can you see this? These lower values here are actually a bit grayer than what you guys can see. It's not very obvious. So this is our 2, 4, 6, 8 seconds on the grade 5. This is our 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 on the grade 2. And it's a lot flatter. And it may seem that our shadows are a bit disappointing, which in many ways they are. But this is part of the process. And I often look at these and think, oh man, this is going to look shit. But actually, like I said, it's not about the density or the deepness of our blacks at this point, or our shadows. I'm not racist. It's just how photographers talk about these things. It's about what our highlights are going to look like. Okay, so 2 seconds is really flat. The tones are far too pale. I think we're going to be looking probably more at the 4 to 6 seconds situation. I don't know how clearly. Actually, that's coming out quite well. So here we go. 2, 4, 6 here. And I think that what we did last time, where we looked at sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds, we probably want to do again. But I might even start at 4, and maybe. I might do 3, 4, 5 seconds. No, I might do 4, 5, 6. So this is 4 seconds, this is 6 seconds. 6 is looking alright. I think we've still got nice highlights in 6. I think I'm thinking that 5 might end up doing it for us. Okay. So I'll just do one last comparison before I move on. This isn't perfect by any means, but you should be able to tell the difference, okay? So look how deep our shadows are here in comparison. Like, they're much more grey. But we'll be adding that. We'll be adding those shadows back in. We'll be adding those shadows back in. Okay. So don't worry. Don't be afraid. So what did I say? I hope someone's keeping track of the things that I'm saying, because I have no idea what's going on. I'm all over the place. It's really hard to do this. Much harder than I was expecting, actually. I think that we'll do a 4, 5, 6, 7 second exposure strip for the next one, and I'm pretty confident that one of those will get us exactly where we need to be, and then we'll just we'll dial in the filtration from there. Okay. What's it like? Actually, this is still quite visible, isn't it? Okay, condoms going on. We've got a bit of a methodology going on here, haven't we? Condoms going on. I'm just going to test something here. Is that working correctly? What are you doing? Yeah, no, that is right. Okay, condoms going on. So we're going to do a 4, 5, 6, 7 second exposure. I'm going to have a slurp of wine to calm my nerves, my jagged-frayed nerves. I really hope this is being informative and isn't just a complete waste of time. And like I say, if anyone has any questions, please just ping them out. Otherwise, I'm going to feel more like a psychopath than I already am talking to myself in my bathroom at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. Right. Here's the next test strip. So I've set my timer to 4 seconds. That's going to be my overall exposure. And then I'm going to do 1 second increments from there up to 7 seconds. Okay. So there's a bit of light that comes out of the back of this thing. And I always am a bit hesitant about about the impact that it has. So that's 4, that's 5, that is 6, and then that is going to be 7. This is looking relatively yellow. I don't like how yellow this is looking. I don't know if I've calibrated this correctly. Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
Now, usually when I do these test strips, I'm quite lazy about agitation. The important thing is just to make sure that they're fairly evenly agitated. When we do a larger print, I'll try to show you all how I agitate. It's a bit harder in some of the bigger trays, just because the print moves around quite a bit. It will look a lot better when the 16x20 is in there because it takes up the whole tray. A lot of people think it's like sloshing backwards and forwards, which is what I'm doing now, and that does work fairly well, and for the purposes of this little tiny test strip, it's perfectly fine. But the method that I like is actually a corner rocking. So you alternate corner rocking, and that creates essentially a kind of like a swirl pattern, like a lazy river kind of situation in the tray, and that gives really, really nice even coverage, because what we're worried about is making sure that the development across the whole print surface area is really nice and even, because we've got a lot of surface area to cover. And this is looking quite deep, but it can be quite deceptive under the black light, under the red light, excuse me. I'm hoping all the Alexa, stop. I'm hoping that all of the various extraneous light sources that I've got are not unduly affecting my paper anyway. So just throwing that in the stop bath, and then again, I'm like fucking Gollum down here, aren't I? Fucking tending to my little fish. Right. Well, this is dark. This is actually going to be probably a slightly more difficult print to do than I had originally anticipated, I think. I actually think that I may have taken that too far. The worst part of this is that I can actually barely fucking discern the difference between any of these exposures. Okay, let me show you what we're dealing with. Condom off. Webcam on. Wow. I'm hoping that no one is shitting their pants every time that the lights come on. Right, here's our new test strip. God, putting that down, there's hairs all over it. Can we see that? So this was our bottom corner, so, this is our top corner. So this is our shortest exposure at 4 seconds, and then moving up to 7 seconds at the top. Let me just show you what we were dealing with last time. Okay, so God, this is hard work, isn't it? Bloody hell. So you can see that there was clearly a lot more gradation in each of the respective steps. Obviously what we're dealing with now is far more subtle. We're not doing f-stop printing, so I'm doing it based on intervals as opposed to stops. So what you're seeing is slightly, essentially we're not working at full or even half stop grades at this point. I can barely tell the difference between these. I can't tell where 7 seconds cuts in. I think it's here, actually. I think that's 7 seconds, and I think that's... yes, I can see it now. That's 6. and that's 4 there, I think. It's pretty subtle though. And this is where things get quite difficult, especially if the print like this is very flat. That 4-second exposure, the difference between that and 5 is extremely minute. And there's a couple of ways that we could manage this. You know, we still have aperture to play with, so it's possible for us to take the aperture up a little bit. I'm at f8, so I'm actually not inclined to do that. I do have half seconds to play with as well, although the difference between them will be very, very subtle. The problem with this print is that there isn't much in the way of highlight detail that I can play off of. I can tell you that I think that this at 7 seconds is too dark. I think the highlights, can you see them? Probably not. The highlights are starting to get quite dull. Whereas at 6 and 5 seconds we still have some detail, like that it's still coming through. Well, I did say that I thought on this strip would be the exposure that I want, but now looking at it, I'm not quite sure where I want that to be. So here's our last one, right? So we had 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 6 seconds. I'm kind of thinking that 6 seconds might be 6 or 5 seconds might be where we want to take this. Could I have a red colour filter to help your laptop screen through the accessibility settings? That's a really good idea, and that's way more sensible than anything that I've ever thought of. I know that you can get like Ruby screens for the darkroom, so that you can use screens. It's just like a very deep red filter. To be honest, I think that the solution that we have is probably what I'm going to stick with. I don't really want to mess around with OBS and stuff too much, or the laptop too much. Okay, we're an hour in, and we have a major decision point here, because I genuinely don't know where to take that. I'm inclined to go for a slightly faster one. So 4 seconds actually, I can actually, now that I'm getting my eye in, 4 seconds is here. Then I can see the 5 seconds, and I can see where the 6 and 7 second break is now. I don't think I have enough information. So, what I'm going to do is do a print, I think. I think I'm going to do a print at 4.5 seconds, and I'll explain why. So, that is 4 seconds. So this one is 4 seconds here. And I think that 4 seconds might be a teeny weeny bit too light overall. But I'm not sure. And okay, I have 2 options here. I could go 4 or I could go 5 seconds. Because I think those are the exposures that I'm zeroing in on. I think that 6 and 7 look like they're going to be too dark. So I'm going to split the difference. I think that's my rationale. I'm going to split the difference between 4 and 5 seconds, and to kind of speed this process up a little bit, and show you guys actually making a print. I'm just going to do that rather than keep doing these test prints, even though we've only done 2. So what I'm going to do, what I'm going to try is moving you guys over here. What? Definitely don't want to do that. Can you see that? Okay. And you're going to have to kind of trust me for a bit, guys, because I'm going to have to leave you alone for a second. I'm going to put the condom on. We're going to make a 4.5 second exposure, and then we're going to slip it in nice and quick, and then hopefully you'll be able to see the magic emerge. But let's turn the light off and see. Nope. That's not going to work, is it? How about now? How about if I do this? That could work. That could work. Okay. 1 second. Yeah, that could work. It's going to go dark for a bit, gang, but don't worry, I am here, I promise. This is like a fucking... This is an experience. Oh my god, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? So, are you still here? Are you still there? Can you still hear me? What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 4.5 second exposure at f8, and then once I've done the exposure, which you won't be able to see, I'll move the red light over, and then you should get a pretty good view of the print materializing. So bear with me 1 second while we just do the exposure. One of the things that makes me a bit nervous about this is that if we're going to have a hard time setting our exposure at 8x10, we may have a hard time doing it at 16x20. Okay. So I'm going to take the shot now. 4.5 seconds. Okey-doke. Now, this should be oriented correctly towards you. Let's see if this works. Can you see that? Can we see that? Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
Okay. Again, this isn't normally how I agitate. I don't like sloshing like this because it moves the print around quite a bit. Normally do the lazy river style. This is looking too dark, I can already tell. I can already tell. And I think we may have to up our exposure a little bit. However, it might be that our contrast is... No, our contrast is looking a little bit too low. I'm already thinking two things, seeing this. I'm thinking that we need to decrease our exposure and increase our contrast. What I'm going to do is, once this is done, I'm going to move it to the stop bath, and then maybe try and move the camera around and then put it into the fixer for a minute, and then we'll wash, and then we'll take a review. This is where I need a fucking cameraman. 90 seconds is a long time. Alexa, stop. Okay, apologies, it is going to go dark for a second. Just drain the developer off into the stop bath. And normally when I'm on my own I don't have to entertain myself. I can I just drink my wine, listen to music, but you've got a purely ambient experience. Alexa, 60 seconds. Actually, I'm just gonna just straight up fix it, and then and that will save time rather than messing around. Does anyone have any questions in the chat? This is a fine time to start posting them in. and then I will open chat when I come back. What's going to happen now is that I'm going to fix for the next sort of 45 seconds or so, and the fixer essentially is the step that permanizes our image. The reason that I'm doing a longer one for the print is because it's the print. I care about it more than I care about the test strip, so I'm gonna fully fix it, and then I'm gonna wash it, and I will move the cameras around so you can kind of see that, or at least see my bum in the screen probably, which basically in this setup is just a shower head, but in a proper setup you would have a little wash tank with continuously running water. But Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop. She's not listening to me. Alexa, stop. Right. Let's just move the condom back to the tripod. Hello. Welcome back. So here's our print. Take it out with my fingers, fuck it. Get the skin cancer. I won't show it to you right now because I don't want to get fixer all over the yeah. It's actually not a bad print, but when I show it to you, you'll see. Why I don't like it. So, god damn, there's a lot of cables in here. Right. Whoop. Oi. Oi. Okay. God, this is... Why am I the way I am? Excellent question. Science has yet to find an answer. Right, here we go. Now, it's going to look pretty soft, I think, on your screen. There is quite a lot of fine detail in the bottom here, but the overall exposure is way too low. And I don't know if you can tell, it's quite difficult to see, but the highlights all in the top are really quite dull. I'm going to try and hold it at an angle that doesn't have all these reflections. Okay. You can tell that it's a pretty flat negative, right? Like the exposure itself is actually quite flat. The contrast is quite low, and the important thing to understand here is that like the range of tones that we have is relatively. This is what I mean by low contrast. Like the density up here versus the density down here is there isn't much separation. The highlights look really, the highlights look really dull to me. Like I'm looking at these bits here. Okay, so these are our highest, or should be our points of highest highlight information, and then the shadows are actually not bad. Like that's kind of where I'd like them to be, but overall the impact is fairly visually boring. And if I show you the reference image that we've got, again, it's quite hard to tell, but we have a much higher impact image on whichever side of the screen it is for you, left I think, than we have here. So I want brighter, punchier highlights and kind of deeper, more impactful shadows, or the kind of the separation between them needs to be a bit more compressed essentially. It just needs more punch. Now the contrast is going to come in later, so I have used a fairly flat contrast grade for this. This is grade 2, which is pretty low actually. I normally dial in at sort of 2.5, but I think that we'll probably, based on this, we'll probably need to be looking at like a 3 or maybe a 3.5. But the exposure is too low, essentially. So we're going to need to punch it up a little bit, and look at actually just sort of looking at the shadow. Look how deep the shadows are, like in the image on the screen, right? So like we have very deep shadows here, and very deep shadows on the sides in these tree trunks, but the difference between the highlights and those shadows is quite substantial. So that's the goal for this, is essentially that I'm trying to make a much more punchier image. This looks really muddy, it looks kind of sooty, is the description that I would give. And it may be that we're not going to be able to get very good separation in the darkroom. I've never printed this before in the darkroom, so I have no idea what to expect. And it may be that, you know, I've been able to modify this digitally in a way that I would struggle to get in wet print. But I can tell you that we probably need to take this back to like 3 seconds from an exposure perspective, and then probably need to punch up the contrast grade. So it's funny, if we look back at our very first test strip, where we had 2 seconds, then 4 seconds here. And that 4 seconds is looking mighty fine, like really deep shadows, really rich shadows, and exposure is kind of more where we need. So, you know, it's surprising that 4.5 seconds at grade 2 is so dull, but it definitely looks like we need to take it back. So we have 2 options. Well, okay, no, we have 1 option, which is to retest. What am I going to do? Let me wash my hands. So I don't contaminate everything. We kind of have a couple of options here. We could do something to speed up this process, which means changing multiple variables simultaneously, which I don't like doing. We could do a test strip that both reduces our exposure time and increases our contrast simultaneously. Now, I already know that I want to dial in more contrast. I can already tell that, so I already know that's going to happen. The problem with changing the exposure variable at the same time is that I don't know whether or not changing the contrast is going to affect the exposure. I haven't calibrated that way. So it will change the exposure by a subtle amount, especially from going to grade 2 to 3.5 on this particular enlarger. The question is, I don't know to what degree. So the 2 options that we have are to do that, or to do another test strip at grade 2 at a lower exposure, or even another test print, let's say at 3.5 seconds or 3 seconds, see what that looks like, then do another test increasing the contrast from there. This isn't a quick process. The important part of what I'm doing with these smaller prints is that if I can figure out what the contrast is, it should be much more straightforward to do the big one when we ultimately get around to it. We've been here for an hour and 20 minutes, and we're not really closing in on that. But once I figure out what our contrast grading is on this small print, I can just transfer that straight to the big one. Even though that is going to require us to do, you know, a couple of test strips to work out what the exposure is on there. So that's the dilemma that I'm currently facing. And part of me is inclined to do a 3-second test strip. No, a test strip that splits between 3 and 4 seconds. Or maybe just a 3-second test strip, and then see what that looks like. The question is how far to take the exposure. 2 seconds was too hot. Surprised that 4.5 seconds looks like that, to be honest with you. I don't like making decisions. You see, if it was me and I was just testing, I probably wouldn't have done a print this early. I probably would have done another test strip to take back the exposure, but I've probably kind of rushed it a little bit. And something that bothers me is that I've seen what it's like at a very high contrast level now. So this is one of the hardest things about working in a darkroom, is that if you suck contrast out, it really affects your perception or judgment of how it's going to turn out. So Ansel Adams, for example, he was an extremely anally retentive man, and what he would used to do is start his prints at grade 0, very, very flat, and then build up contrast from there. And he would do print, because sucking contrast out is terrible, and it's very, very hard perceptually. I think we don't have any choice. I think I'm going to have to do another test strip at 3 seconds. I think 1.5 out will probably get me what I need. Yeah, let's do that. In fact, yeah, no, I'm just going to do a strip at 3 seconds. Actually, in fact, I'm going to do 2 strips at 3 seconds, and then if that looks okay, then I think we may just dial the contrast in from there, or we could make a print. Let's just start there. Let's just start at the test strip. I'm accumulating wine glasses. Right, condoms going in. Again, I hope this isn't too boring. We might have slightly more interesting things happening fairly soon. When we start getting into the good shit, the good kush, as we start building up bigger prints. But unfortunately, this process has a certain level of tediousness to it, especially when you're starting. And because I also am anally retentive, I do a lot of test strips because I just can't choose. And I also am fairly inexperienced in the darkroom, to be honest with you. Like I've shot a decent amount in here, but not often enough, and it's been a couple of months since I was in here, so you get a bit rusty. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to send these the other way. Yeah, I'm going to do 2 test strips, and I'm going to see how these show me what 3 seconds is going to look like. So 3 seconds at f8. Okay, so 2 test strips at 3 seconds saves me using the whole sheet. Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
Again, it does concern me marginally that we're not making very rapid progress with this. At 8x10, which should be the easier of the 2. But once I've gotten a bit unrusty, then hopefully 16x20 will come a bit faster. I keep looking at the wrong webcam. I should be looking at the Leica. The other part of this problem is that I don't know how quickly the Leica is discharging. It is a fairly old camera at this point, 9 years old, and the battery isn't the greatest, so we may fall down to just a one camera setup in the not too distant future. But we'll see. We'll try to speed up a little bit. And I should say that just because the images are coming out looking a bit dark doesn't mean that these are underexposed. It just means that we've underexposed, or rather overexposed, our print. Alexa, stop. Oh, can't fish them out. Ah. However, this is one of the problems with Foma films, is that they are a little bit on the slow side. So a 200 speed film, in fact, Foma 200 specifically in its data sheets, nowhere does it say that it's actually a 200 speed film. At best, with a very, very generous amount of development, it is a 160 speed film. More likely a 100 to 125 film. So this image probably is very slightly underexposed overall, which is why we have got quite a short exposure time. 3 seconds is very short actually, for what I'm used to. Now, that's looking a bit better to me. Now, one thing that I've noticed about this shorter exposure time is that it's brought our shadows up quite a bit, so you'll see how tremendously muddy this will look now. However, I think that is where our highlights need to be placed. Okay, so how's he doing? Not great, Ben. We're progressing very slowly. So these are my 3 second strips, and you can see just how dull and washed out all those shadows are. Look at this tree. Look at this tree. So if I just flash up the reference for you, you can see where we need to take this, right? So this tree specifically here, which you can see on the far left hand side, is going to be printed down a lot. And so this is how it can be a bit deceptive. You might think, well, you look at that and you think, well, that's a shit exposure. And that is a shit exposure. But with the power of filtration, we'll be able to lock that in. We'll be able to pull that way, way down by adding magenta in. And now you can see what our highlights kind of look like. You can see what our highlights are looking like. Oh god, the glare is so terrible. But they're looking a lot peakier. And if I show you the print that we made, and just put them side by side, okay? So if we do a bit like this, okay, you can see how much brighter it is in the highlights, and obviously these shadows are very, very muddy, but you can see that the highlights are looking a lot better. So I think that the solution here is that we're going to the solution here is that we're going to do a 3 seconds, and then I'm going to I'm not going to print that obviously because the contrast is horrible, but we're going to up our contrast now. So, oh no! Are we freezing? What's happening? How is that now? Is it still freezing? I haven't got that many drop frames. Talk to me, chat. It does say that I'm not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Fix itself now for me. It might just be. It might just have been me transitioning from one view to the next. Okay, it might have been just that reference switch. Let me know. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to just boost our contrast. I already know that we need a faster exposure to save those highlights. But obviously, I'm not going to make it print at filter grade 2, so we're going to up that now. I'm just going to put this away. You've already seen me fuck around with the dials. Now, where's my magic sheet of paper? What did I do with that? Here it is. So I stole these from the internet. Now, that's 32 magenta. Oh, see, I need to just whack this up for 20 seconds. Okay. So I now take this to 75 magenta, I think, and then take this down to 15. Whoops. Right. So what I've done is contrast control dialed. So I've changed the contrast settings to take it up from a grade 2, which is where we prefer, which is on my enlarger anyway, 41 yellow, 32 magenta, up to a 3.5. Which is 15 yellow, 75 magenta. I'm sorry, I'm just going to get a new grill. 1 second. Okay, we've lost 2 blips of battery, which means we probably have about an hour left on the Leica before we need to start panicking about this. I'm going to try and speed this up. We're going to do a test strip now, and probably what I'm going to do is just a set of very short exposures, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. No, actually 3, 4, 5 seconds, just to see what it looks like. No, actually 2, 3. I'm going to do 2, 3, 4 seconds at grade 3.5, just to see what that looks like. I will make an 8x10 print at whatever exposure that looks good off of that test strip, and then if 3.5 looks okay, excuse me, at that contrast, we'll have a short break, and then we'll set up for the 16x20 because I'm kind of conscious of time. I'm not trying to rush through this, but I definitely want to. I'm definitely keen to make a nice big print. Although I have to say that I've actually framed this very nicely. I did it quite quickly, but the 8x10 print that I did just now actually looks very, very nice. So if I can get a good contrasty print out of it, even at 8x10, I will have come away a happy chappy. So let's dial this down. Turn the light off. Am I right here? I was getting 1 image every 5 seconds or so on both cameras, but seems to be okay now. I think we may have had just a period where I was dropping frames, so I apologise for that. Basically, I'm at the very furthest end of the house here, and it wasn't even. I was only doing like 200 kilobytes a second when I tested it this afternoon, and I had to bust our old Netgear Wi-Fi extender out of cold storage and plug that in, because it was impossible otherwise. So, whoops, tuck in my little skirt. Right, so what I'm going to do is, as I said, I'm going to do a 3/4, what did I say, 2-3-4 second test strip with the new contrast grade, which is 3.5. I'm just going to do one. I don't think I need more than that. And then I'm probably going to do an all-up print from there, based on whatever looks good from this, I think. I don't think we need to go further than... Fuck. I don't think we'll need to go further than 4 seconds, but... yeah, so that's 3. Okay, all up 3. What do you reckon, chap? Should we do a 5-second one as well? 3. 4. Oh, sorry, 3. 4. So I've done 3, 4. What have I done? 3, 4, 5, 6, I think. I'm not paying attention. Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
And the only reason that I'm doing it with a couple of different exposures in the range is because I think it would just be helpful to see a point of comparison between the different times. I don't think that we're going to be straying too far out of that range based on the test strips that we did earlier. And even though there is going to be a mild difference in exposure in increasing the contrast filtration value, it isn't going to be too significant, and to be fair, if anything, it's probably going to make the image look a little bit lower in exposure, but I'm hoping that 3 is our kind of like baseline, and then we can work from there. So at most it's going to be, 4 seconds. And by the way, these exposure times are actually quite short. I did mention it earlier. I could stop this down to f11 and essentially double our times, but I'm not going to do that because it's going to fuck everything up. So. And your mileage may vary. In my old enlarger, which was a condenser enlarger, which had quite a bright bulb, I think. Alexa, stop. I had very, very short exposure times very often in that enlarger. Although, since switching to Xtol as a developer, I've realised that a lot of my HC110 negatives are very, very thin. And in printing, that is the bad. It's okay it's okay for digital scanning. In fact, it's probably slightly preferable to have a thinner negative when you're digital scanning, or just scanning. But in printing, the denser the negative that you have, the better it is, because it means you have fuller shadows, and you have a more controllable exposure time usually. It also means that you probably can add more contrast as well. Okay. Ooh. That's more like it. What did I do? 3, 4, 5? Can't remember. 3, 4, 5, I think. Right. for a bit. Sweet. Right. Thank you for the updates. I appreciate that. So here's what we're looking at. Oh, let me get a point of reference on the previous one. Although I did a slightly different test strip. See if I can find one that. Do these cross over at all? Probably not. Okay, let me show you what it was like. Oh, that's a good reference. So, this is our 3 seconds here. Then we have 4 in the middle, and then 5. Did I do 6? I genuinely don't remember. This might be 6 at the very end. I like this a lot more. I can already see that 3 seconds is probably a bit too high. It might actually be possible to take this up to another filter grade, like 4. I actually think 4 seconds is looking quite nice, which is this one in the middle. And the reason for that is because we've got nice highlights. We've got quite a good bit of shadow in there, but it's not too dark. And if you look, this is a really shitty way of comparing, and I'm very, very sorry that I don't have a better system for you. It's a bit more static, but if you look at these side to side, can you see that? So you can see how the exposure is a bit brighter. Like these shadow zones here, or the shadow areas here, are a little bit lifted, and just generally the highlights are brighter. But then you can also see that there's a much better separation between the highlights and shadows here than they are on the print. Ow, everything's reversed on the screen. It's hard to see. Can you see that? So I can already tell that we're on for a good track here, I think. We have a overall much better exposure, and also we have a bit more contrast. It's funny though, because I think that I actually think that the contrast is still slightly too low, because we lifted the exposure quite a bit. I think if you consider the reference image that we have, we've got really quite deep shadows in those parts of the undertrunk, you know. I think it may be difficult to achieve this just using conventional methods. I'm almost inclined to see, I think that 4 seconds actually looks a bit low, and almost like 5 seconds looks good. This is where you could spend hours and hours just poring over test strips. You know, part of me feels like doing this at filter factor 4 might be necessary. Again, we have a couple of choices. We can print. I could print like a 4.5 second at 3.5 and see what that looks like. If the overall contrast looks pretty nice, then I think we might leave it there for the 8x10 and then move up to the 16x20. The alternative is that we could go for a higher contrast, because I actually think that 4 seconds looks nice. Looks very nice actually in the highlights, but I don't think the shadows look deep enough. But then the thing is, when we go into 5 seconds, 5 seconds looks actually quite considerably different to 4. I don't know if you can see. I don't know if you can see that evolution. It might not be so apparent to you guys, but there is actually quite a hard break between 4 and 5 seconds, which often happens, I find, when you have a higher contrast grade. Like the differentiation between some of those smaller steps can be quite a bit more obvious, just because the shadows are printing in substantially harder. I definitely think 3 seconds is too low, and again, we have a dilemma. What do we think? I'm going to raise this to chat. What do we think, chat? Should we... Here's the options. The options are we print 4 seconds at 3.5, which is this. Or we print another test strip, let's say 4 and 5 seconds at filter factor 4. Do we want to do another test strip, or do we think that we should just make a print and just wing it? What do we think? Well, people have a think, and I have a think. I'm just going to make a note of the first print that we made. Which was, fucking hell, what was it? 4.5 seconds at, 4.5 seconds at 2. F8 at filter factor 2, which was Y41 M32 grade 2. Okay. Wing it. Yes, baby! Right. Y15. Yes, it is RC paper, and I did mention this earlier at the start of the stream, and I completely forgot to bring it up ever again. I'm using Ilford Multigrade Warm Tone Pearl RC. So by Ilford standards, that is a warmer tone than neutral. It is their split. So Pearl is their semi-matte offering in this configuration. You can get an RC version which is a deluxe, a heavyweight, and that comes in a satin, which is a slightly different texture. But I like warm tone Pearl, and I have to shoot RC because I don't have a print washer. Once I get one of those, I'll probably start printing fiber. But with this setup, I shoot RC, and it makes it much faster. So. Okay, I'm going to do a print, so that means that you're going to go over here. I can see that I've sloshed a bunch of fixer all over the floor, so that's excellent. And I will say that I have tried their other offerings in gloss and in cool tone, and I have had some nice results out of cool tone, especially cool tone glossy, but I don't think it works for a lot of my images, generally speaking. So, hello, we are going to be shooting a 8x10 print, so I'm going to do another print now at 4 seconds, grade 3.5, or filter factor equivalent 3.5, and just we're going to see what that middle exposure on that last test strip looks like, and then we're going to go from there. Faber is a beast to get into. Yeah, it is much more annoying, and it involves a whole significant level of oops. Yes, it does involve a bit more of a more involved setup, but it is something that I will get into eventually once I get a print washer. But I do like RC. I think RC prints look nice. So, did I switch my camera? Ah. So you are going to have a tray cam view, and again. Don't worry, chat. I'm right here. I'll narrate the experience for you. So, paper's coming out. Timer is set to 4 seconds. I'm going to just put the paper in now. And we are already filtered. So, okay, there's our exposure made. And now I'm just going to move safe light over so you can see. And then Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
Not a very graceful entry, it must be said. But hopefully that's okay. And you can see why this sloshing, you may not be able to pick it out in fairness, but you can see why this sloshing doesn't work very well, because unless you've got a lot of fluid in your tray, you can potentially leave certain areas unexposed, or exposed to the elements, put it that way, while they wait for the fluid to slosh back, which is why I much prefer a lazy river method, although this tray is significantly too large for the size of the print I'm doing at the moment. It will be much better for when I do the 16 by 20. But already I can tell this is looking a lot nicer. It's a lot brighter than the last print that we made, and also the separation is much better. You guys probably won't be able to see it, but the separation is generally a lot better. I am a little bit worried about some of the darker parts near the bottom of the image though. Down here, this looks pretty muddy, and I don't know if that's a contrast or if that's an exposure thing. We'll have to look at it when we take it out. Also, I've realised that while the image is the correct way up, I don't like that the large part is not at the... I prefer this being at the bottom, if you know what I mean. Alexa, stop. Not really much harm in this sitting the developer for a few minutes. A few seconds. So we're just going to stop that. And then we're just going to fix Alexa, 60 seconds.
1 minute. Starting now.
This is why I need a cameraman. I need someone off screen, behind the scenes, seamlessly switching between my cameras for me. I am genuinely worried that the Leica is going to turn off in a little bit, which is not going to be great. But I think if this print looks okay, and we're just going to move to the 16 by 20, what I'll probably do is we'll just put a pause on the stream. The stream will still be running, but I'll just put a standby intermission screen and take the Leica offline, just give it a quick battery recharge and see if we can't get a bit more juice in the old gal while we're reconfiguring the room. This print looks okay, but I have a feeling actually that it's slightly underexposed. The one thing I will say is that a lot of people will tell you that prints look much darker after they've dried down, which can be true. Alexa, stop. However, I don't find that to be the case, because at least for my setup. Hello, over. This looks really nice. Oh, I'm sorry, you're looking at a towel. I apologise. What's going on here? It's pretty. This is looking considerably better in every dimension. It does look a little bit like it might be on the dark side, but and that's not the force, that's exposure. Right. I apologise for how much of my arsehole that you people are seeing today. Right. Okay, this is looking a lot better. So I'm just going to, in fact, I may just keep that off for a second. So, this is our new print. This doesn't really do it justice. I have to say, this is looking at much nicer now. So let's just get that reference up, shall we? Now, there are some advantages, obviously, to what you're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen, which is that it's not being filtered through a webcam in a dark bathroom. I think you should be able to tell that this is a lot closer. Oops, I'm pissing water everywhere. Whoa! That's not good. Ignore me. This is a lot closer to what we're working with. We've got nice shadows here on the right hand side. Got a hair on it. We've got nice highlights across the top. Looking nice, very nice actually. And just as a point of reference, if I just show you these two side by side. So, can you see that? So this one, okay, that's not helpful. This one is our original, what is it, 4.5 second exposure at grade 2. So underexposed, way too flat. This one is our 4 second exposure at grade 3.5. And I should have known better actually, that just by increasing the contrast we could have gotten a better result. Although we did have to increase the exposure a little bit. I really like this. I really like this actually. I do feel that it's actually still a tiny little bit underexposed. So some of these parts in the top part of the image still look a little weak. Like the light streaming through the light filtering rather through the foliage is not amazing. And these parts down here are a little bit dull. There's a bit of light that touches some of the foliage that I wish was kind of a little bit sharper, but I don't know if I don't know if that's exposure or if that's just not separating between some of the darker tones sufficiently. Again, let's just throw up that reference. So, okay, yeah. So the image that I've obviously processed is, love a ring light. Do you not love a ring light? The image I've processed is contrastier than this. However, I think that is extremely close to what we're after. And I don't think we're going to get much better from an 8x10. I think we probably could stand, where am I looking here? I think we could probably stand to maybe just have it, 3.5 second exposure, and maybe take the grade down a little bit, just to a 4, and that would just give it that little bit of extra exposure and that little bit more pop in contrast. Because I know what will happen, as I was explaining earlier. Oftentimes, when we have something called dry down in printing, which is that when it's wet, it has a bit of a sheen to it, and it has a bit of increased reflectance, and especially with fibre-based paper, once it dries, it looks darker. With RC paper and this darkroom setup that I have, I tend to find it's actually the other way, and the images that I find very dark in here have a tendency of looking quite a bit lighter, especially in the shadows when daylight comes around. So I have a suspicion that actually the exposure is probably spot on, and I need to go up a little bit extra contrast. What I think I'm going to do, I don't think we're going to take the 8x10 any further. I think I know what I'm doing with the contrast now. I'm going to pause the stream, so we're just going to have an intermission screen. You can go off, have a piss, have a drink. I'm going to come back in 5 minutes. The setup's going to look a little bit different, and we're gonna make the 16x20. And we're going to do a series of test strips to establish exposure, but I'm probably going to take it at a filter factor 4. That's what I'm going to do. Executive decision. We're going to do filter 4, 16x20, and start again, basically. How many people are in here? 9. So the 9 of you in here, I'll be back shortly, and I'm going to get Hubble in to give me a hand and shout at him. So relax. We'll be back in 5-10 minutes, and we'll have another crack at this process, but in the big scale. Right. Oh, and if anyone has any questions, obviously post them in the chat, and I'll be checking as we go along, and I'll come back to them. But we'll see you shortly. Probably should mute myself and say it in case I say horrible things. Oh, no, that's not a very interesting shot. Hello! Right. So I've just got my housemate to help me move the enlarger. I'll show you in a second. How am I controlling contrast? I'll show you guys. So what I'm going to do, I've changed the enlarger now so that we're printing on the bigger easel. So I've lifted it up, I'm going to be reconfiguring it because I've got to refocus and stuff like that. So I'll show you that process, which might be quite interesting. But I've just seen that Ben has had a couple of questions in chat, so I'll answer those. How am I controlling contrast? I have a colour enlarger, so I'm controlling it through the filtration channels on the enlarger itself, and I'll give you a front view of that in a second. But I also do have multi-grade filters, the plastic filters, because my old enlarger had a filter tray. It wasn't a colour enlarger. 2 times exposure when I go to a 4. Yes, typically. That's probably true for when you're using the physical filters themselves. So when I was talking a little bit earlier about my magic cheat sheet of my filtration values, this is the dual filtration values that Ilford have on their data sheets. In theory, by modifying the the yellow filter in contrast to the magenta filter, I don't know how exactly they've calculated it, but it should keep the exposure value roughly the same. So if I was using the actual filters, and I'll show you them. I can show you them. Then, yes, I agree, I would have to significantly change the exposure, but for the purposes of this I probably won't have to change it very much, and because I'm switching to the 16x20 anyway, we've got to start again from an exposure perspective. But just to give you a point of reference, so, because I don't know how easy it is to see. I'm out of breath, it's so hot in here. Don't know how easy it is to see from printing down. This is the 00 filter, multi-grade filter, so that's, as you can see, fairly orange, quite yellow. And then if we go all the way up to a grade 5, which need a bit of nails for, you can see that it's, oh, you might not actually be able to see it, but it's very magenta. It's a very deep magenta. And at the start, Ben, before you came, I did make a pretty stupid boo-boo. Normally what I do after a printing session is I clear my settings on the enlarger head. But last time that I was in here, I had a very, very, very low contrast print that I've been really struggling with for a long time, and I can't get the contrast in it. It's a very, very thin negative, and I'd set the colour head to maximum magenta, so it was a grade 5 equivalency, and I was printing a grade 5 image when we started, so it was pretty intense. So let me show you what the front looks like. Can we see that? Hang on a minute. I'm going to struggle. Whoa! 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 So this is what the front of the enlarger looks like, essentially. So you can see that we have these dials on the front: cyan, magenta, yellow, and white. And I can actually manually toggle the white to disengage the filters. And these dials on the side. Oh, it's all reversed. It's all reversed. It's like using a Hasselblad. These dials on the side essentially control the filtration input value. So what I'm going to do is, sorry, we're going to be unprofessional mode for a second while I move around. Again, I need a cameraman or camera woman, camera person. Like that. Behold my feet, you fetishists. Sorry, I was drinking wine. Right. I am going to reset my Oh, going to reset my lens back to f5.6, which is its maximum aperture. And now I'm going to show you, hopefully, if I plug something in here. What are you? This temporarily. Right, can you see that? Right, I'm going to set this to white so we can expose a little bit better, but what I'm going to do now is adjust the enlarger to make this a roughly 15-inch square image. So, this easel, not my favourite, it's not in the best condition, but it was extremely good price. And also, as you can tell, my my mechanical timer is supposed to have a toggle on it, but I broke the toggle at some point, and I can't get it to stay permanently on. So what I'm doing is I'm just framing this up, just changing the enlarger height to just frame. Whoa, not a great sound. Just frame this up. So we're looking pretty close. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of a faff because I need to set the height and then readjust focus, which causes a bit of breathing. That's probably about where I want it. So I'm just going to lock that in now. And then I'm just going to adjust the focus. Now, a real pro would use a focus finder, and I do have a focus finder, but I can't fucking use it. I find it very, very difficult to use. I'm just going to drop this down very slightly. I find it very, very difficult to use. And my eyesight's not bad, so I just do it by eye. And it's a bit like how you would do it when you're trying to focus a scene in real life, where you just you rock the focus back and forth until you reach the point that you're comfortable that you've got the focus right. Now, that's not ideal, obviously, for various reasons, because it may not be actually sharp at the grain level, but by stopping down a little bit, we can get it very, very close. So, oopsies! Okay, that's a problem. So I've got to be careful. This setup is quite sensitive to movement. Now, what I have to be very conscious of, what I'm very, very anally retentive about anyway, is just is making sure that all of our corners are crisp, especially down here in the top left where this is the hard edge. These are the bezels. That was pretty good to me. That was pretty good to me. Just going to do that for another 30 seconds. Grade 4, 6Y2. I'm also going to change my filter factor while I'm here. So you can see how magenta that is now. This is pure white. I disengage the filters just so it's easier to focus. But you can see what, oops, you can see what the filtration will look like on the actual print. Very magenta now because we're putting all that contrast in. And I'm getting so hot and sweaty. Not that you guys need to or want to know that, but I'm just giving you a life update while we're sharing, you know. That was pretty good. One of the things I'm a bit disappointed with in this exposure, and I noticed it as soon as I scanned it, is that, you know, ideally, ideally, let's just show that so it's not a boring screen. Ideally, that I would have had like a large format camera and adjusted or tilted my plane of focus, so all of this, because actually it's tilting slightly towards the camera. This is closer, and this tip down here is slightly further away. As it stands, some of these areas are slightly softer than here, which is disappointing, but it is what it is. Okay, just want to check. So that is, I might actually have to turn the light on here. So that it is at 15 inches, and that is at 15 inches, so we're at 15 inches square. Obviously the paper's going to go in like this. Okay. Okay, that's looking pretty nice now, I think. So it's pretty hot in here. Does anyone have any questions before we go into the 16x20? I'm just letting the Leica charge up a little bit more, just so we can make sure that we have both camera views when we come in. But the intention basically is to just do a repeat of what we've seen already, which is do a series of test strips and then make a full print. This should be a lot quicker because we've already got the contrast nailed in. I've actually modified the contrast to a contrast factor 4, so I know that that's my baseline. That's where I'm going to start from, and then we're going to just do a series of exposure test strips, and then that's it. Once we've found what looks to be good from an exposure perspective, I'm not going to fuck around with contrast much more, and I'm just going to make the full size print. It might be, looking at the 8x10, that I want to take it a little bit higher, maybe take it to a factor 4 or something. But I think that sorry, a 4.5 or even a 5. But I think we're in a pretty good position, generally speaking, from a contrast perspective. It's just about making sure that the exposure is dialed in nicely. Unfortunately, because we're scaling up, we have to start again. So we had, what do we have? A 3 or 3.5 second. What actually did we shoot that? No, 4 seconds. Sorry, excuse me. 4 seconds at f8 on the 8x10. So we can conservatively say that we probably want to double that time, and I might start with an 8-second exposure, and that will be the hottest part of my test strip, and then do 2 or 3 second increments from there up to maybe sort of 25 seconds. It isn't a very dense negative, which is part of the reason why I'm putting it, you know, we're using such a high contrast grade. Just taking a look back at some of my previous notes. So for example, I have a shot that I did on the Pentax f8 filter grade 3.5. It was a 28-second exposure, and that was a denser negative. I don't think we'll get up into the realm of 28 seconds, but we might have something in the low 20s. So we'll need to test for that. But the test strip will get us there. can probably hear horrible grunting sounds. I'm very sorry. I'm just resetting. Oh fuck me! I'm just resetting. Got to get the big boy paper out now, and this becomes much more unwieldy. So, great success. So you can see that we've got a bit of a different setup now. The enlarger is slightly more in frame. You may not be able to see it, but we've got some table legs and a bigger easel. Essentially what I have to do when I shoot 16 by 20, because the easel's got a 2-inch bezel on it, so you can create a 2-inch border. And that's great. My enlarger can print, in theory, up to a 20 by 24 just on the stand. Unfortunately, with a 2-inch easel bezel, I can't fit that onto here and actually print 16 by 20 at the same time. Excellent design. And the thing is, the Czechoslovakians had it had it figured out back in the 80s, because my old Mayopta a Payma 6, which is the enlarger I had before this, actually had a canted stand. So the enlarger came up and out. So the bigger print that you made, the further away it was. It created an air gap essentially. But obviously with a vertical stand, you're increasing or expanding the size of the projection in all dimensions, and that's not helpful. So I have to use this small table to be able to get images of this size. A bit frustrating, but it is what it is. Okay, I think we're ready. I've got everything set up down here. I'm just going to check. That's white, and obviously I've changed. Oh no, I'm not at 5.6. I'm at 4.5. So I'm going to set this to. I'm going to set this to f8 just to keep things consistent, because f8 was what we were using before. And I think it might help me with my frame of reference. You're about to see essentially what we were doing before, but a considerably larger scale. And that brings with it its own challenges and upsets. Now, I need my other one of these because I don't have the coverage. I'll be back in a second. Sorry, it's just that a 16 by 20 and a little 8 by 10 book cover is not quite big enough. Right. Whoop. Now, I'm hoping that I've still got a bunch of test strips from the last time I printed. I think I've got quite a few, so let's just check what the light situation is like. That's not great, but it's okay. That's okay. Where did I put my condom? This is where the wheels fall off. So, what we're going to do, when I put you away, is we are going to do a, what should we say? A test strip starting at 8 seconds with, I think we'll do, actually no, let's say a, what's a multiple of 6? 9-second exposure, and I'll increase in 3-second increments until we run out of paper. So 9, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. No, that's probably too much. 9, 8. Maybe we do 8 and 2-second increments. 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. I don't know how far we need to take this. 8. Wait, I probably skipped a few, didn't I? I'm so bad at maths, if you guys know me. 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27. Okay, that's 7 increments. Yeah, I think we should do that. I think we should do 9. I think we should do 9 seconds at 3-second increments. Oh god, this is so much less stable. Gonna be a problem, but we're gonna have to manage it somehow. Okay. I didn't show you guys this before we put the lights off, but look at the fucking size of this paper. It's actually quite scary, considering the significant lack of space that I have in here. Actually, before I do this, I'm just going to make sure I didn't move the enlarger. No, we're all good, we're all good. Set that back to 9 seconds. So, same thing as before. We've got a big old boxy. I've got a bunch of test stripperinis. There's one. I'm just going to hold that away so it doesn't get fogged by anything nasty. Okay. Oh. And we're going to do exactly the same process as we did before. Okay. So. Oop. Making sure that the paper is safe is the hard part of this sometimes. I'm always a bit nervous. That's fine there, like that. Okay. So, filtration is on. That is big enough. Maybe it could go a little bit further. So, what did I say? We're going to do a 9-second overall exposure, 3-second increments across the piece. And I think we should just do this diagonal because that was working okay for us before. So, 9 seconds, here we go. Oh, it's magenta. Okay, this is the hard part now because I have to make a judgment on... I can't really... It's very difficult to see... it's very difficult to see the paper, so... And reach as well, bloody hell. So that's 3... That's going to be 6... 9... 12... 15. So I did 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 plus 9 seconds. That's 24 seconds. Should I do another one just at the very end? That'll take us to 27. No, I don't think I will. I don't think I will. So we have a maximum exposure at the bottom here at 27 seconds. Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
Okay, so actually we're getting pretty interesting results already. Definitely. Oh, okay, maybe not. Maybe 9 seconds was too ambitious. Maybe we should have started at 6 and just seen what the true bottom end of the scale would have been. I don't know. It's looking pretty dark in some of the deepest parts, down at the sort of 27-second range. Bearing in mind this is going to be at filter factor 4, so this is going to be pretty contrasty. Also, one thing I will say about these is that because they are a considerably larger size, it can affect your impression quite a bit. Obviously, with an 8x10, we have a much smaller image, and it's actually quite compressed. You won't get as much separation between values just because of the size, basically. So sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to make a direct comparison between the 8x10 and the 16x20 when they come out. But and sometimes I've been surprised in the past where I've thought, oh, actually, you know, that filter factor doesn't quite work at that scale in the same way. Alexa, stop. Into a stop bath. And then into our fixer. But I can already tell that this is looking quite interesting, and it will be. I have to remember which way I've oriented this. But again, you know, because we've already taken some of the hard work out of this, because we've already basically decided what our contrast grading is going to be. We're just worried about the exposure. So we're just worried about what those highlights are going to look like. So our paper is safe. Oops. Interesting. Very interesting. Very nice. Okay. Yeah. Can you guys see that? I feel that at the start of the stream, I've been planning for this for a little while, and I was so flustered at the start of the day. I just, I wasn't engaging my, stream, my printing game, and so I was a little bit all over the place at the beginning. But we're starting to get there. I feel the juice is flowing. So. My hands quickly, and then I'll show you what we're working with. Again, I've got to be a little bit more cautious now because the enlarger is in a slightly more precarious situation. Oh, fucking hell, it's so bright, this thing. I'm going to turn it down. Sorry for blowing your retinas out. Okay, look at that. Very nice test strip. It's always, sometimes I think it's easier doing it at this scale. Now, this was our short exposure at the bottom, 9 seconds, and then we went up to what, 24 seconds at the top? Look how dark that is. You can see, hopefully see how we go from very dark over in this side to a much lighter situation over here. In fact, the 9 seconds actually doesn't look too bad. So this is 9, I can actually see, that's 12 here. 12 into 15 is not super obvious to me, but sometimes that can be the case. So that would be 9, 12, I'm presuming this is 15 here, and then we have 18, or maybe that's 21, and 24 definitely is on this end. 24 is quite long. 9, 12, 15, 18, so, okay. Interesting. Strokes beard scratches head. 9, 12. I can't quite see the 12, 15 borderline, so I don't know if it's obvious to you, but here is, this here is the 9, and then that's 12. So I think 15 should come about here, approximately. It's probably just slightly obfuscated by that branch. And I think this is 15 here. And then there's quite a harsh line here. So I think this is 18. I think this is 24. Oh God, what did I do? I did 19, 9, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. I did 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, right. So actually, I'm stupid. So that's actually 21, and then that's 18. That looks pretty dark, to be honest. I can see a line there. So one of the things about this process that's a bit weird when it comes to intervals is that you're not doing it based on exposure value. So there's a different kind of printing called f-stop printing, where you actually have, and I can't do it here because I don't have a timer that's refined enough. You need tenths of a second. I only go up to half of a second. But you can actually dial in, quarter of a stop or a third of a stop, and you can actually make modifications in an actually technically applicable way, as opposed to this. The thing is that paper actually runs into reciprocity failure. So the more that you expose, the less different the exposure becomes. So after a certain point, you can run into sort of 24, 30, 40 seconds. The density of your image is not going to increase substantially at minor increment levels, only at sort of macro increment levels. So that's why we have a really significant difference between 9 and 12, and then increasingly minimal difference between sort of 12 onwards, because essentially we're saturating the paper with photons. I have no idea. I think what I'm going to do, so that's 9, 12. 12 looks pretty good, actually. But also, I think 15 looks very nice. See, this is 15, right? This is 15. And that branch in the centre has what I would call an ideal level of shadow density to it. It's got a bit of darkness on the bottom, but it's actually it actually gradates from the lighter part of the top, and actually the highlight detail is very nice. So if we take a look at our previous 8x10, in fact I think definitely now looking at this, our 8x10 is probably a smidgen under contrast, underexposed, but I would say that is almost exactly bang on. The one thing I will say about this is that you can look at these test strips and you think, "Ooh, I quite like the look of that," and you go and you create the full-size print, and you've got a corner somewhere, and it looks like ass. What I'm gonna do. Thing is that 12 doesn't look too bad, so my concern is losing too much of the shadows in other parts. I might do a test strip that's just 12, 15, 18. So ostensibly that will be like this realm here, and then this is 15, and then this is 18. We should be able to see the separation between them a little bit better when it's just those three side by side, and we'll probably need to refine it a bit further from there. So I'm presuming, based on this, that there's probably something between 12 and 15, rather than between 15 and 18. I'm willing to be proven wrong. I've been wrong many times before, but I'm going to assume that that's going to be the realm that we're going to go in. But I need to see them. I need to see those three. I don't think, certainly not 9, and certainly not 21. I think we're just getting too dark at that point. So it's going to be within that exposure regime. So 15. I think 15 will probably do it. I have a good feeling about 15. 15 gives me the tinglies in my Wimbleys. Oh. But I need a sip of wine just to convince me. So I am still going to do another test strip because I think we need to do that. I'm not prepared to commit to 15. And then we'll go from there. How is everyone doing tonight? We haven't had sunlight in England for 2 weeks. My vitamin D levels are running dangerously low. But I hope everyone is doing okay. And they're finding this, I don't know if informative or instructive is the right word, but entertaining anyway. I'm always looking for feedback. Like I say, it's been a long time since I've done any streaming, and actually doing this in a darkroom is just about the most fucking difficult thing I've ever done. Right. Let's get one of these bad boys over. So, funny story about this paper. That when I bought this paper, I bought 10 sheets, and they had to be placed on back order so that they could be ordered from Ilford. And the people that I purchased it from gave me 50. Now, to give you a bit of economy situation here, 10 sheets of 16 by 20 is somewhere in the region of between 55 and 60 pounds, depending on where you buy it from. So I was going to shell out I think it was about 56 quid for those 10 sheets. So not insubstantial. The 50 sheets tends to go for around 150 to 200 pounds. So I saved about 100 to 150 quid. And I still have rather a lot of them left. So if anyone wants a 16 by 20 print of any of my work, please let me know. Right, we are setting at 12-second global exposure, and I'm going to do 2 3-second increments to do 15 and 18 seconds. So let's do that. Oh God, that's not supposed to happen. Okay, well, that's bad. Should probably remember what I'm holding. Can't use that again. 3 seconds. Luckily, I don't need the other one. So that was fortuitous. That is 3 seconds, isn't it? Yeah. There's always accidents in here, especially when I'm involved. Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
Now, why 90 seconds, you may ask? Well, if you look at the datasheet for Ilford Multicreate Developer, the minimum time is sort of 90 seconds. 90 seconds to 3 minutes development. Printing works a little bit differently to film, because with film, we can keep developing and keep developing and keep developing until we reach a point called gamma infinity, so we can't build up any more density. But a very active developer will really overdevelop. Alright, in fact, any developer will overdevelop. But in paper, we don't really run that risk so much. It's actually quite difficult to overdevelop in paper. And so, actually, I'm more running the risk of potentially underdeveloping and not allowing all of my shadows to properly, I should say, print in. I found 90 seconds to be pretty good, pretty diminishing returns beyond this point, to be quite honest with you. Your shadows build very, very fast in multi-grade developer at this concentration, at that speed, or rather over that development time. I don't think that we would have deeper shadows if we printed much longer than this, to be honest. Also, Alexa, stop. Also, The developer is quite warm. I had it at 22 degrees versus my fixer and stock bath, which are a little bit cooler, so development will happen a bit faster. I can feel myself knocking this fucking tray over. The risk is increasing with every passing fucking half an hour. With every increasing sip of wine. Okay, here we go. Papers away. Right, seeing very little difference between these. Let's see how this goes. And I don't know if I mentioned it before, but the only reason I rinse these in the sink is because I don't really care about them. We're only fixing them for a fairly short period of time, and I don't really care if they are not properly fixed and not properly washed. So, okay, I can see a pretty substantial difference between 12 and 15. Excuse me. I can see an even more significant difference between 15 and 18. So my theory was certainly correct that 18 is definitely too far on the black end of the spectrum. Yeah. Condom's coming off. So, remember me? Whoa! So this is our new strip, this is our old strip. So 15 in the middle. I actually can't see where. Actually cannot see where 12. Oh, okay, that's interesting. 15. So that is 15 seconds, right? I've moved the test strip slightly. It's not quite there. 18. So right, sorry, excuse me. This is a lot harder to do when the this is counted. So you're probably going to struggle to see the difference. Here, ooh, am I on the right side? This side is the 18, and I don't know if you can see it, but this is the 18. This is where 15 goes into 18, and then 15 in the middle, and here between my two fingers here, this is 12 and this is 15. So 12, 15, 18. Is this obvious? Dropping frames again. No! Oh well, that's just the way it is. How many frames am I dropping? Doesn't look like I'm dropping any more. Please advise. But looking at this, I've dropped something on the negative. See how I was telling you that I'm normally anally retentive. Do you see this here? This right here? Can you see that? This right here, where my finger is? That's a droplet of something. I've got a droplet of fixer or developer or something on the neg, on the paper rather. Very bad. I'm going to try to avoid doing that on the proper thing. This is hard. Alright, here are my immediate thoughts. I think 18 is too dark. I think that 18 is not what I'm looking for. I think that 12 doesn't have the depth in the shadows. So 12 is not looking like what I'm after. They're too high. these trees, which if I go back to my reference, are the ones that you see on the right hand side of the image, and they're quite high. They're quite peaky. They should be printed much further down. However, I also think that the exposure at 15 doesn't look quite deep enough. We had this problem before in the last one, where there were some quite subtle differences. And when I did that, do you remember when we did that 3, 4, 5, whatever that was, test strip? There were some very, very subtle differences between them, and it's hard with 16 by 20 because I have such a large field to deal with that a small test strip doesn't always necessarily yield us all the information that we need. There's a couple of options here. I'm inclined to say 12 definitely is too light, so we are looking more in the 15, 16, 17, 18 realm. And one of the options, in fact, the option that I'm leaning to more is doing a test strip 15, 16, 17, 18. And one of those times is very, very likely to get us where we need to be. Another option, maybe when we're a bit further down the line, is to just do an 8 by 10. Just take one of the 8 by 10 sheets, put it in the middle, see what that looks like at a given exposure. My immediate reaction is we probably need to increase the exposure. 15 is looking pretty nice, but something between 15 and 18 is probably where we need to be. The question is, do I do a strip at 16, 17, 18, or do I do one that includes 15? So many decisions, so little time. I'm going to do a strip at... I'm going to do a 16, 17, 18 strip, I think. I want to see the difference between that block. No, I am going to do a 15, 16, 17, 18 block, and just try to separate those out and get a good sense of what those will look like. Holy fucking Christ! Can you hear that? It's like in my garden. Jesus Christ. Apologies if, aside from blowing your retinas out during the process of this, you've also blown your eardrums out. We're getting closer, team. We are getting closer. Wow, that's bonkers. I don't know where those fireworks are, but they could just as well be coming from my garden. They're so loud. They're so close. Right. to do it, but I might have to close my window. Fuck me. It's all happening this stream, isn't it? And the condom is not doing its job as well as I had expected. There we go, that's better. Did anyone do fireworks this year? I haven't done a fireworks night in I don't know how long. Fucking eons. It's been a really, really long time since I've seen live fireworks. Most of my time these past few years has been spent comforting dogs during fireworks night than it has been anything else. Right. We're doing a 15-second global exposure. So let's do that. And then we're going to be doing 1 second increments. 15, 16, 17, 18. Also, this is pretty late for fireworks. What is what, 10 o'clock? Maybe it's youths. Maybe it's youths. Alexa, 90 seconds. Oh! Alexa.
1 minute and
Alexa. Alexa, stop. Alexa, 90 seconds.
second timer. 1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
Alright. Alexa, cancel the first timer.
You have 2 1 minute, 30-second timers on this device. A 1 minute, 30-second timer with about 1 minute and 12 seconds left. A
Right.
1 minute, 30-second timer with about 1 minute and 26 seconds left. Which one do you want to cancel?
The first one.
1 minute and 30-second timer cancelled.
Sometimes she just doesn't respect me, you know that? Does anyone else have this? Siri doesn't respect you. Alexa doesn't respect you. The hardest part about this darkroom is being on your feet all the time. I'm not going to say on my knees because someone's going to fucking clip it. But you are on your knees all the time. And I go to bed broken and sweaty. Alexa, stop. I'm actually quite looking forward to the final print of this. I think it's going to look pretty good. The 8x10 is looking okay. The more I look at it, actually, every time I glance up, the more I look at it, I think that I haven't done a very good exposure of it. But I suspect that I'm liable to, when I turn the cameras off, go back and do it again with a slightly shorter exposure and slightly higher contrast grade. Just do that again. Oh boy. Whoa, Nelly. Which way around do I do this? Lightest at the bottom, darkest at the top. Okay. One moment, please. One of the things I'm seeing is that I am gonna struggle to determine the difference between these. I should have pencil marked them. They're actually remarkably similar. 15 seconds is actually looking not too bad. So I'm switching to non-Chernobyl cam. Can you tell what it is yet? I can't. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to discern the difference between these. So one of the most sort of immediate things that's quite interesting to me is that if you compare it to the previous one, again, no fucking idea if you can see this, but this is 15 seconds down here. I can't quite tell where 15 seconds ends. This is 12 seconds going into 15 seconds. The 15 seconds looks obviously a lot nicer. Can you see that? So you can immediately see, even though it's not in focus, that 15 seconds looks generally darker. Can you see? So there's a much deeper shadows. Interestingly, this section in the middle, which was 15 seconds on the previous strip, and sort of a 16 or 17 second one on the new strip, doesn't look materially very much different. Which is to be expected because we're only talking about a 1-ish second difference. There's really not that much in it. For whatever reason, this 18 seconds here here actually looks better on the previous test strip than it did on my current one. I don't really understand why that would be. I don't think that 18 seconds is what we're after. Just judging by the density in this sort of clawed piece of wood, the shadows are falling off quite a bit here, and they're a bit deeper. I wish that I could tell where 17 seconds and 18 seconds began. 15, 16, 17, 18, 17, 16, 15. Fuck, I should have marked these. I should have fucking marked them. I'm afraid, chat. I'm afraid. And the thing is, when you start getting into this level of granularity where you start talking about a 1 second difference, it may sound trivial, but there is a difference. And it's subtle, but it can affect the overall image quite substantially in some circumstances. So it might seem alien-retentive to be like, oh, I don't know about 15 versus 16 seconds, but it can make a difference. And the difference here is how deep those shadows are going to get. And so, it's funny because I think the highlights look pretty decent across all of these. It's quite hard to judge. 18 seconds, even the highlights still look alright. I'm thinking that these two interior ones are my 16 and 17 seconds. And that's where I think I'm focusing on. I think 18 seconds looks like it's going to be too dark. And so I think that we're going to do one more test strip. And I'm going to do 15 and 16 seconds. But I'm going to do it... I might actually do 2 test strips and just cut across the image. in 2 blocks. And that will give us a range across the highs. So if you look at the image again, if I do something that cuts across those high key values at the top, and then something that covers across those lower values nearer the bottom, that should give us a bit of that. That should give us a good frame of reference, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to do that. So one more test strip. The thing is, if I'm thinking that it's a test strip that's the difference between 16 and 17 seconds, why don't I just do a 16.5 second print? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a 16.5 second print. I'm going to do a 16.5 second print on the 8x10, somewhere just in the middle of the print. That will just give me a reference point in terms of the range of values. And then if that looks good, we'll just make a big print from there. It may be a bit disappointing. Should I do that? Alright, here we go. Alright, I'm going to leave it to chat. 2 options. We do a 16.5 second test print at 8x10 just in the middle here and just see what that looks like. Or we could Billy Big Bollocks it and just use a 16x20 sheet, 16.5 seconds global exposure, and just make the print. What do you reckon? What do we think? Audience participation. I've made too many decisions tonight. Don't leave me on red like this. Don't leave me on red. Let's do it. Let's do a full scale print. 16.5 seconds for okay. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to set it up so that we can see. Do I have 40 free sheets? No, I don't know how many sheets that I've got free. Sorry, I did. I did get 40 free sheets for free when I made the purchase. Yes, that is correct. So from that perspective, we might as well. Whoa. Just for you guys, just so that we can accelerate this process slightly. That's going to be okay, I think. Right. Okay. Ooh, this is always slightly scary because the last couple of times that I've done this, I have, last time I printed in here, I had a very, very nice 16x20, and I somehow managed to misalign it. This easel is not very good when it comes to the interior bezel thingies, and I managed to have 2 massively off-axis, off-centered prints, and they were ruined, which is very, very upsetting because, you know, these aren't cheap. So, and even though, yes, Ben, I got 40 of these for free, it's the principle. So. Alright. so I've got to be just careful about this. I don't want to spoil anything here. Whoa! Like doing that. Fuck me. My bum's too big. Again, I'm going to have to leave with you with a somewhat ambient experience for a few moments, but rest assured that I'm still here and trying desperately hard not to fuck up. This is upside down. Oh! That's not supposed to happen. I can't see. And I've got paper out. Oh my god. What's happened? What's gone wrong? What have I done? Oh! Is it the bulb? What's happening here? Oh, you. Not like this. Not like this, chat. You're not gonna fucking believe this. Oh my god. What a cock tease. You're not gonna fucking believe this, but I've just blown the bulb on the safe light. Right before the grand finale. Oh man. Ow! Jesus Christ, that is hot. Yes. Yes. I can see it, the filament's gone. Okay. Wow, that is really, really upsetting timing. What are the odds? Actually, what are the odds? I don't know, I've run this safe light for like, I don't know how many dozens of hours. Oh my god. And at the last moment, the moment they were actually going to make this the print. That is so me. Oh man. Okay. Well, we don't have any choice. We've got to do it. It's just going to mean that I can't see. And you guys won't be able to see either. I do not have any spares. They're not a super specific bulb, but they're a small, fairly small screw thread bulb, fairly low wattage as well. I think it might only be a 5 or a 10 watt bulb. We're not liable to have one of these. It's a 15 watt bulb. Well, In the words of Barry Keoghan's character in Banshees of Inisherin, there goes that dream. We're just going to have a purely ambient experience. I know the layout of the room well enough that I can do this in the dark. I've still got a little bit of ambient light, so it's not perfect dark. So we're just going to have to do without the red light. That's really upsetting though, because I was going to set up the camera so that you guys could see what the print would look like as it was coming out. But I guess we're not going to be able to do that. So let's just do it. I can still print. But the timer on the stream has has just been added. It's obviously sick of me, so this is going to get pretty dark. I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to see me moving around. Again, I will narrate the experience. Okay. Whoa. Okay, this is quite disorientating. Now. I can do this. Hashtag believe. Hashtag believe. Where is my tray? Okay. I'm not entirely blind, but it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, that's for sure. Actually, probably the hardest part of this is going to be making sure that the sheet is lined up properly on the easel. There is a tiny little bit of ambient light coming from the cameras, which is very, very helpful. I can just about see. I'm not that old. I'm not dead yet. And in fact, the condom is not entirely efficacious either, so hopefully... No, that feels right. Whether or not that is right. No, that's not right. I can feel it. So here's the problem with this easel, is that you can actually push the paper. Fucking hell. So I can actually push the paper through where the guides are, which I can't do on the other easel, so it might not be aligned properly, but I think I'm just going to have to live with it, I'm afraid. Okay. I don't want to get this fog, so let's just go. I can already see that I've moved the easel very slightly, and we're going to get a little bit of this corner is not correct. It's going to be a problem. Hopefully that was straight. Right, Alexa, 90 seconds.
1 minute and 30 seconds. Starting now.
Okay. Unbelievably, I actually can see just about what I'm doing. And upsettingly, I'm doing my lazy river printing agitation approach, which I was going to show off, and now I can't. It is coming out though. And unfortunately, I think that I have fucked up the easel again. Can't quite tell. I can't quite tell. It's not perfectly dark in here. I can just about see. I can see that there's a print, but I don't know whether or not the easel has been has done its job. I think that it hasn't. The guides don't look correct to me. But I can't quite see the top corner. Also, the level of ambient light in here is moderately concerning, but I think for the Alexa, stop the. I think for the. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all gonna happen. It's all happening. The sound that you heard is the sound, in fact, that you thought that it was. Yeah. I think that might be the end of the stream. I can't see what I've done. I can tell you that the print has not worked correctly because the easel hasn't centered it. And I can also tell you that I've just tipped my entire tray of developer on the floor stroke into the fixer. So the smell is quite extreme. Alexa, 50 seconds.
50 seconds. Starting now.
Wow, the smell is pretty bad. Yeah. I knew this was a bad idea. I knew this was a bad idea. Yeah, I can. So, we are probably at the end of this. I'm gonna have to clean this. I can't see what the situation is like. I'll turn this on in a second. Wow, that smells really strong. I don't know what I've done. I don't know where to fix it. I don't know where the developer has gone. But we may as well see this through. Wow, that smells so strong. Alexa, stop. Paper's okay, isn't it? Yeah. Oh boy, there is a lot of fluid on the floor. Oh, I'm actually proven incorrect. I lied. Excuse me. Excuse me. There is a very thin border on one side, so I've made a mistake probably in the bezel. Wow, it looks amazing. Give me a second and I'll show you. I'm hoping this is fixed. There is no more developer in the tray. Oh boy. Oh god. The smell is incredible. Oh, fuck. Ah man, this is going to be a bad cleanup. Right. Right. So what happened was, at the very end of the development, I couldn't see what I was doing, so I've tipped the developer all over the floor. There's no developer in the tray. It is literally all over the floor. But I still managed to print and, or rather stop and fix. I'll show you what this looks like because, I have to say, it is quite impressive. So there we go. And as a point of comparison, just because this is always nice to see, because you know, 16 by 20 is not something that people necessarily see all the time, but just as a point of scale. So there is the 8 by 10, and that is the whole 16 by 20. Yeah. Am I dropping frames again? I'm dropping fucking trays. There we go. It's a shame because actually that is an extremely nice print. Almost perfect, I would say. It's a shame that there is developer absolutely everywhere, and also you'll notice that I've made a mistake in the easel, and I know exactly what I've done. I've put a 1-inch border on the inside, but I didn't compensate for it on the other, which is a silly mistake. I also must have knocked it very slightly. I've got a thin black border in the bottom. Wow, this is unbelievable. Genuinely, I wish you guys could see it. Can you see that? It was worth the payoff. I think that it could stand. It's going to be interesting to see what this is going to be like in the daylight, because I think we could have a bit more separation here. Like these shadows are pretty much exactly where I want them to be. In fact, the shadows are all over here, but I think their exposure is a bit low. I don't think it looks muddy, but I do think the exposure looks probably a little bit low, which part of me feels like we should we should print it a little bit up, so maybe a 14 or 15 second exposure rather than a 16 and a half, and then maybe take it to a 4.5, because the shadows are really nice, and I think that you know, crossover between the a little bit of extra exposure with a little bit of an additional contrast will be exactly where we need it to be. It's much nicer than the 8 by 10, and now I think that the 8 by 10 needs to be revisited, because I think that it needs a bit more exposure. But also because of the scale of the negative, there's a huge amount of fine detail in this negative. It's a Hasselblad medium format negative. It just really benefits from this scale, from this size. Appreciate the love. Oh man, it's such a shame. 15. No, this isn't 15. This is 16.5 seconds. This is a 16.5 second exposure, so it's a little bit. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, maybe 15. Maybe I should just go with my gut. Yeah, 15 and maybe 4.5. Or maybe 15 and 4. I might have a play with this and give it a try. That's a couple of different options. Oh my god, the floor! Oh my god, this is terrible. I knew this was going to happen. It's so upsetting that this has happened right at the end, because if we could have spent a little bit more time in here and just refined this, I could have gotten something really, really special, I think. Yeah, a bittersweet way to end the stream, I think. I've got to clean this. But I think if I clean this, I might be able to. I might be able to have another attempt. I've still got plenty of developer, so. Yeah, there you go. That's what the last 2.5 hours has been for. I hope it was worth it. I hope you learnt something. I've learnt something, which is never to do this ever again. There we go. Let's just do a reference. Can we do that? Is that possible? Is it possible? Get our old friend a ring light on. What do we think? What do we think, chat? Close? No cigar? pretty good. Again, like I say, it probably needs a smidgen more exposure. I think it needs a bit more exposure, a bit more contrast, but it would be very, very interesting to see what this looks like in the daylight, because all of my prints in here look look too dark, and then when I take them out and I see them the day after, the morning after, they always lift. So that combination of kind of dry down and then seeing them in daylight or in non-artificial light really, really makes a difference. Okay, well, there we go. I'm going to oh man, I'm going to kill myself and then I'm going to tidy it up. Cool. I actually was planning on redundancy rules. Yeah, I mean these safe lights have such a massive lifespan on them that I didn't expect that there would be a problem with it. So I'm really disappointed in that. I think what I did is I nudged it with my arse, and that sort of cable nudging maybe just fried the bulb. Again, like I say, really, really disappointing way of ending the stream after all of that. But inevitable in some ways. I knew it was going to happen. I knew this catastrophe was going to happen at some point, and of course it happened in the dark. So I'm glad that you. I'm glad that no one actually physically saw it. That was at least it's not captured on video in physical form. God, the stench is quite profound. I was going to do. What did I say? Did I say I was going to do a Q&A? Does anyone have any questions about anything that I've mentioned this evening, or about darkroom printing, or whatever really? At this point, I'm happy to answer whatever questions anyone might have about the process. What to do, what not to do. Well, essentially, don't do anything that I've done. Or even, would people be interested in me doing this again? I have no idea what my situation is going to be like from a darkroom perspective in the future. But there is opportunities potentially for me to do this. If there was interest, or even if people wanted to make their own prints, I can potentially provide some help. Two safe lights, yeah. Yeah, they are so cheap that I should probably buy one, to be honest with you. But that's life, baby. It is what it is. Maybe don't breathe that in. Not much choice. I have done. Okay. Right. Well, in that case, if no one's got anything, I will. I'll leave it there. 3 hours and 43 minutes. Is that really how long we've been streaming for? Jesus Christ. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for participating and joining, and following me along for this fairly wild ride from very boring, stupid beginnings to very turbulent, exciting ends. I'm gonna go and get cleaned up. If I can figure out a way of salvaging this situation and maybe doing one final print, because it would be a shame to leave it here, given that I've got everything set up. I know exactly where I want to take this, to just leave it like that. But I am going to stop the stream. Thank you very much for watching, and peace out.